My hand was shaking, and the scalpel I was holding slipped and hit the metal tray. It made a loud noise that seemed to echo in the quiet operating room. Dr. Mark Stanton, the chief of surgery, stared right at me over his mask. His voice was quiet but sharp, and everyone could hear him clearly. "You will never be a surgeon, Hayes," he said. "You don't have the guts for it. You don't have the intuition. And you definitely don't have the right to question my authority in my own OR." His words were slow and very clear, meant to hurt me. "Get out of my operating room, now." The words just hung there, and it felt like 20 years of wanting to be a surgeon were collapsing, and 12 other people were there to watch it. All I had done was suggest a different way to handle the bleeding. It was a newer technique I'd just read about in a medical journal last week. It was less invasive and could have meant a much shorter recovery time for the patient. But Dr. Stanton didn't like suggestions from second-year residents. He didn't like being questioned at all. He just wanted everyone to do exactly what he said. No questions asked. My hands were shaking as I stepped away from the table. My face felt hot under my mask. The feeling of being humiliated spread down my neck. I could feel everyone in the room looking at me. The other residents, Dr. Kenji Tanaka and Dr. Sarah Kim, suddenly looked very busy staring at their own hands. The scrub nurses pretended to be very focused on their instrument trays, counting things that didn't need to be counted. The surgical tech started adjusting equipment that was already fine. Only Dr. Ben Carter, the experienced anesthesiologist at the head of the table, gave me a small nod. Maybe he felt bad for me. Maybe he understood. Or maybe it was just a random movement that I wanted to see as support. As I pushed the big OR doors open, I heard Stanton start barking orders to keep going without me. His voice was back to its normal bossy tone, but I thought I heard something else in it, something I'd never heard from him. It sounded almost like he was scared or worried. I stopped for a second right outside the doors, my hands still on the metal plate. Through the little window, I could see his hands moving fast, too fast, over the patient's open stomach. The monitors behind him showed that the patient's vitals were dropping. The heart rate was falling, blood pressure was unstable, and oxygen levels were going down. Whatever was happening in there, it wasn't good. And I had just been kicked out. I just stood there in the scrub room, still shaking, pulling off my gloves automatically. Through the window, I could see Stanton working. And he looked frantic now. His movements were jerky, not smooth and graceful like usual. The patient's vital signs on the monitor kept getting worse. The numbers were glowing red, like an alarm. I should have just left. I should have gone to the residence lounge and tried to forget this whole humiliating thing happened. That's what anyone else would do. It would be the smart thing for my career. "Keep your head down. Don't cause trouble, just get through your residency." But I couldn't make myself walk away. Some feeling I couldn't explain kept me standing there. Instead of leaving, I just watched through the glass. 15 long minutes passed. Stanton's movements got more and more frantic. The team was moving around him, but I could feel the tension even from outside. Then, all of a sudden, Stanton stepped back from the table. His shoulders dropped. He said something I couldn't hear through the thick glass. Then he looked at the clock on the wall. It's the universal gesture. It's what surgeons do when they call the time of death. My breath just stopped. "Time of death," I saw him mouth. 1447. The patient was David Miller, a 42-year-old construction worker. He had 3 kids and a wife who was a school teacher. I had looked at his chart that morning before the surgery. Stanton had told him he had a tumor in his abdomen that couldn't be operated on just 3 weeks ago. He said it was advanced, aggressive, and terminal. The surgery today was just supposed to be to help with the pain, maybe give him a few more weeks. But when I looked at the scans myself, something didn't feel right. The way the mass looked on the CT scan, the fact that his blood work didn't show the usual signs of cancer. I had ignored my feeling, though. I was just a second-year resident. What did I know compared to the famous Dr. Mark Stanton, chief of surgery with 30 years of experience? I watched Stanton pull his gloves off angrily and walk out of the OR without saying a word to his team. No discussion, no moment of silence for the person who just died. Nothing. Just a man walking away. That's when I noticed something weird. The monitor behind him, the one that tracked the heart, still showed a very faint, weak heartbeat. It was barely there, but it was there. David Miller wasn't completely gone yet. My heart was pounding as I pushed back into the OR. "Dr. Carter," I called out, my voice sounding louder than I meant it to. "Did you see that? The monitor. There's still a heartbeat." But the team was already cleaning up, moving with their usual efficiency. The nurses were getting the body ready to be taken to the morgue. The instruments were being gathered. Everything was moving on as if the case was over. Dr. Ben Carter grabbed my arm firmly as I tried to walk toward the table where David Miller was lying still. The ventilator had just been disconnected. "Anna, don't," he said quietly, so only I could hear. "Stanton called it. It's finished. You have to let it go." His grip was strong, almost painful, but his eyes looked different. They looked worried, or maybe guilty. They told me he had seen it too. That tiny flicker of a heartbeat. "How many?" I whispered, looking right at his face. His face went blank, like a professional mask. "How many what? How many patients has—" "He called too early? How many times have you just stood here and let him give up when there was still a chance?" The question just hung there between us. His jaw got tight. For a second I thought he might actually answer me. Then his professional mask came right back. "You're upset. You're emotional. That's normal after what just happened. But you need to go home, Dr. Hayes. Clear your head. This has been a hard day for you." He let go of my arm and turned away, but not before I saw it again. Guilt. Definitely guilt. I stood there for another minute, watching as they zipped David Miller into a black body bag. I watched them move him to a gurney and wheel him out toward the morgue. I thought about his wife, who was about to get the worst phone call of her life, and his 3 kids, who would grow up without a dad. All because of an inoperable tumor that my gut told me wasn't a tumor at all. I left the OR and went straight to the resident's computer station. My hands were steady now. My mind felt clear. I logged into the hospital's record system and pulled up David Miller's entire file. Every test, every scan, every note. I opened the CT images and zoomed in on the mass in his abdomen. There it was. The density was all wrong for a tumor. The edges were too clean. The tissue around it was inflamed, not being invaded by cancer. This wasn't cancer. It was a hematoma. A massive, deep collection of blood, probably clotted, in his abdominal cavity. It was treatable. Survivable. Completely, absolutely survivable if it was handled correctly. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. A hematoma that big doesn't just show up in a healthy 42-year-old man for no reason. It usually comes from an injury, or a problem during surgery. I scrolled back through Miller's medical history. 6 months ago, he had his appendix out. It was a routine surgery performed by Dr. Mark Stanton. The notes after the surgery were short and standard. Patient recovered well, discharged after 2 days. But then, 3 months later, Miller came back to the emergency room complaining of pain in his stomach. The ER doctor ordered a CT scan. That scan had been read by Stanton himself. His notes said, Large abdominal mass consistent with aggressive tumor. Recommend oncology consult. He never mentioned it could be a hematoma. He didn't consider it might be a complication from the surgery he himself had done. He just jumped straight to terminal cancer. Why would a top surgeon like Stanton make such a big mistake? Why would he see a mass and just assume the worst? Unless it wasn't a mistake. Unless he knew exactly what it was and was lying about it. The thought made me feel cold. I was still staring at my laptop in the empty lounge when my phone buzzed. A text message from a number I didn't know. "Stop looking into Miller's file. It's for your own good." My hands tightened on the phone. I looked around the lounge, but I was alone. The text came through the hospital's internal messaging system. That meant someone was watching what I was doing on the hospital network. Someone who knew exactly what file I was looking at. Someone who wanted me to stop. My phone buzzed again, making me jump. This time it was a call from the ICU. I answered, my voice a little shaky. "Dr. Hayes? Dr. Hayes, this is Nurse Diaz from the ICU. We have a situation. We need you up here right away." My stomach dropped. What kind of situation? There was a pause. Then Nurse Diaz's voice came back, sounding confused and a little scared. "It's David Miller, the patient from OR3, the one who was pronounced dead this afternoon." My heart stopped. "What about him?" "Dr. Hayes, he's not dead. The morgue just called us. When they went to process the body, he had a pulse. We brought him up to the ICU and he's stabilizing. His eyes are open. Dr. Hayes, he just woke up." I ran through the hospital hallways. My heart was pounding so hard against my ribs I thought it might break through. It wasn't possible. Stanton had called the time of death 6 hours ago. The body should have been in the morgue, cold. But when I got to the ICU, there he was. David Miller. He was pale and had a breathing tube in, but he was alive. His chest was rising and falling with the ventilator. His eyes were open, looking around at the nurses with a confused, scared look. The monitors above his bed showed vital signs. They weren't strong, but they were there. A heartbeat, blood pressure, oxygen, life. The ICU attending physician, Dr. Julia Ramirez, grabbed my arm. "What on earth happened in that OR today? His chart says he was pronounced dead at 14:47, but the morgue attendant called 20 minutes ago saying he found a pulse. We brought him up here, got him on support, and he's actually getting stable." My mind was racing. "Where's Dr. Stanton? Does he know?" "He left for a conference in Boston 2 hours ago. He won't be back until Monday." Dr. Ramirez's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Anna, I've seen Stanton's notes. He declared this man terminal, inoperable tumor, stage 4. But I just ran a new CT scan, and I don't see a tumor. I see what looks like a large, contained bleed, a hematoma." "That's exactly what I thought when I looked at his scans earlier," I said, moving to the computer to see the new images. "Look at the density here. This isn't cancer. This is blood, a huge collection of it, probably from a surgical complication." Before she could answer, the ICU door opened and Dr. Ben Carter walked in. He stopped cold when he saw Miller alive in the bed. His face went pale, then he carefully made it look neutral. He looked at the patient, then at me, then at the scans on the screen. When he spoke, his voice was serious. "We need to talk. Privately. Now." He led us to an empty consultation room and closed the door. He checked the hallway once before he turned to us. "David Miller isn't the first. There have been 3 others in the past 14 months. All declared terminal by Stanton. All sent home with hospice care. All died quietly within weeks." The words hit me like a punch. I had to sit down in one of the hard plastic chairs. My legs suddenly felt weak. I was trying to make sense of what he was saying. You're saying Stanton has been covering up his surgical mistakes by declaring patients terminal? By basically murdering them by not treating them? My voice was just a whisper. Ben nodded slowly, his face grim. I've been suspicious for 8 months, ever since a patient named Robert Evans died. Evans came in for a simple gallbladder surgery. Stanton did it. 2 months later, Evans came back with abdominal pain. Stanton did a scan, said it was terminal pancreatic cancer, and sent him to hospice. He was dead 3 weeks later. He paused, his jaw tight. I was the anesthesiologist for Evans's original surgery. I remember thinking Stanton seemed rushed that day, distracted. The surgery took longer than it should have. There was more bleeding than normal, but Stanton closed him up, said it was fine, and sent him home. Dr. Ramirez leaned against the wall, her face pale. Ben, what you're describing is murder. You're saying Mark Stanton, our chief of surgery, is killing patients to cover up his mistakes. I'm saying he's protecting his reputation, Ben said, his voice hard. Mark Stanton has been the face of this hospital for 20 years. He's brought in millions in donations. His name is on the new Heart Wing. The board loves him. They won't do anything without solid, undeniable proof. I stood up, my fear turning into a cold anger. Then we get proof. Miller is alive. We can run the right tests, find out exactly what's wrong. If Stanton made a mistake during that appendectomy 6 months ago and then covered it up by misdiagnosing it as cancer, we can prove it. We can show the board, the medical director, everyone. Ben shook his head. It's not that simple, Anna. You don't get the politics here. Stanton has powerful friends on the board. If we accuse him without absolute proof, we'll be the ones who get fired. They'll say we're just residents with a grudge. So what do we do? I demanded, my voice rising. Just let it go? Let Miller recover and then wait for Stanton to come back and… What? Finish the job? Wait for the next patient he messes up on to be called terminal? The silence in the room was answer enough. I grabbed my tablet from the table and went to the door. I'm running a full workup on Miller. Blood tests, imaging, everything. If there's proof that Stanton caused that hematoma and then covered it up, I'm taking it straight to the medical director tomorrow morning. Ben grabbed my arm before I could open the door. His grip was tight. Anna, wait. Stop. His voice was tense, like he was genuinely scared. There's more, something I haven't told anyone because I wasn't sure, because it sounds crazy. He took a deep breath. Stanton isn't just protecting his reputation. I think he's being paid to make certain patients disappear. I stared at him. I must have heard him wrong. What do you mean, paid? Paid by who? Why? Ben let go of my arm and ran his hand through his hair. 2 months ago, I was working late. It was almost midnight. I heard voices. It was Stanton, talking to a man I'd never seen before. Expensive suit, briefcase. They were standing by the stairs, and Stanton looked angry. I heard the other man say something about the arrangement and keeping up your end. Then he handed Stanton a thick envelope. Dr. Ramirez's eyes widened. You think someone is paying Stanton to kill patients? That's insane. Why? I don't know, Ben admitted. But I started paying attention. The patients Stanton declares terminal. They're all relatively young, between 40 and 55. They all have families, and they all have big life insurance policies. My mind started connecting things I didn't want to connect. Life insurance fraud? You think someone is paying Stanton to misdiagnose patients so they die, and someone else can collect the insurance money? I think it's possible, Ben said. I don't have proof, but David Miller, he has a $500,000 life insurance policy. Robert Evans had $1 million one. Sarah Chen, another patient who died 6 months ago, had 750,000 lists. The pattern is there. I felt sick. This was so much bigger than I thought. This wasn't just malpractice. This was organized crime. This was murder for money. We have to call the police, I said. Right now. And tell them what? Ben asked. That we suspect a famous surgeon is involved in insurance fraud because of a conversation I overheard and a pattern I noticed? They'll laugh at us. We need real, solid proof, Anna. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Last warning. Walk away or face consequences. My hands were shaking as I showed the screen to Ben and Dr. Ramirez. Someone is watching everything I do. They know I'm looking into this. Dr. Ramirez's face hardened. That's it. We're going to hospital security. This is intimidation. It's criminal. Before we could move, my phone rang. The caller ID was the ICU nurses' station. I answered, my heart already sinking. Dr. Hayes, you need to get back here now, Nurse Diaz said, her voice tight with panic. It's David Miller. His vitals are crashing. He's bleeding internally. Massive hemorrhage. We need a surgeon immediately, but Dr. Stanton is in Boston and every other attending surgeon is in surgery. Dr. Hayes, if we don't get him to an OR in the next 20 minutes, he's going to die. For real this time. I sprinted back to the ICU, Ben and Dr. Ramirez right behind me. The scene was chaotic. Nurses were swarming around Miller's bed, hanging bags of blood, adjusting IV medications, calling out numbers. The monitors were all screaming alarms. Miller's blood pressure was dropping fast. His heart rate was climbing. What happened? I demanded, pushing my way to the bed. Nurse Diaz looked up, her face pale. He was stable 20 minutes ago. Then suddenly his pressure just dropped. His stomach is swelling. It's a bleed, has to be. The hematoma must have burst. I pulled back the blanket and lifted Miller's gown. His abdomen was visibly swollen, hard as a rock, and a purple bruise was spreading across his skin. He was bleeding internally, and it was happening fast. Without surgery right now, he'd be dead. We have to get him to an OR, now, I said. Page every surgical attending in the hospital. We already did, Nurse Diaz said. Dr. Morrison is in a 6-hour spine surgery. Dr. Kaplan is in an emergency heart surgery. Dr. Jen is in a trauma case. Everyone else is either busy or not answering. Dr. Hayes, there's no one. My mind was racing. I was a second-year resident. I'd helped in dozens of these surgeries, but I'd never been the one in charge. Never the one making the life or death decisions. But I knew the anatomy. I knew the procedure. And David Miller was going to die right here if someone didn't do something. Get OR-7 ready, I said, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. Get him on the table. I'll scrub in. Ben grabbed my arm. Anna, you can't. You're not authorized to operate without an attending. If something goes wrong, you'll lose your medical license. Your career will be over. If I don't, he dies, I said simply. And his death will be on my conscience. I can't live with that, Ben. I won't. I looked at Dr. Ramirez. You're an attending. You can supervise me. You can be in the room. That makes it legal, right? She hesitated for just a second, then nodded. It's a gray area. But yes, if I'm there supervising, we can argue it was an emergency. Let's go. We rushed Miller to OR-7. My hands were shaking as I scrubbed in, forcing myself to breathe slowly. I'd trained for this. I knew what to do. As I pushed the OR doors open, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Standing in the observation gallery above us, watching through the glass with cold, angry eyes, was Dr. Mark Stanton. He wasn't in Boston. He had never left. And from the look on his face, he was not going to let this surgery happen. My phone, which I'd left in my locker, buzzed with one last text. You were warned. Stanton picked up the phone in the gallery and called down to the OR. His voice came over the intercom, cold and commanding. "Dr. Hayes, step away from that patient immediately. You are not authorized to perform this procedure. I am ordering you to stop." My hands suddenly stopped shaking. A weird calm came over me. I looked right up at him through the glass, then down at David Miller on the table, his life slipping away. I had to make a choice. Obey Stanton and let Miller die, or defy him, save a life, and probably destroy my career. I looked directly up at Stanton and spoke clearly, knowing the OR was recording everything. Dr. Ramirez is the attending physician of record and is supervising this emergency procedure. Patient David Miller is experiencing a life-threatening hemorrhage and will die without immediate surgical intervention. No other attending surgeons are available. Under emergency protocol, I am proceeding with Dr. Ramirez's supervision. I turned to the scrub nurse. "Scalpel!" Stanton's voice boomed over the intercom. "Dr. Ramirez, I am ordering you as Chief of Surgery to stop this procedure immediately. If you allow this resident to continue, I will have both of your medical licenses revoked." Dr. Ramirez's voice was steady as she stood across the table from me. "Dr. Stanton, this patient is actively dying. Emergency protocol allows for this under attending supervision. I am the ICU attending for this patient, and I am authorizing this surgery. Your objection is noted." I made the first cut, a clean line. Blood came up, but that was expected. I worked quickly but carefully. The second I opened his abdomen, a lot of dark blood poured out. Liters of it. "Suction," I said, and the tech moved in. As the blood was cleared, I could see the problem. A large hematoma had burst, and underneath it I saw the real issue. A small hole in his bowel, right where his appendix had been removed 6 months ago. The tissue around it was infected and dying. This was from Stanton's first surgery, a tiny mistake that had been slowly leaking, forming the hematoma, causing the infection. It should have been fixed months ago. "I need to repair this section of bowel," I said, my voice all business now. "Dr. Ramirez, can you retract here?" As we worked, Stanton's voice kept yelling over the intercom, threatening us, ordering us to stop. But I just blocked him out. My whole world shrank to the small area in front of me, to the damaged tissue, and the life that depended on my hands. I worked for 90 minutes. I carefully removed the damaged part of the bowel, repaired the hole, and cleaned out all the infected tissue. Ben, at the head of the table, kept Miller stable, adjusting fluids and medications. Finally, I put in the last stitch and stepped back. "Closing," I said. The nurse handed me the suture, and I started closing the abdominal wall, layer by layer. When I put in the final skin staple, Miller's vital signs were stable. His blood pressure was holding. His heart rate was normal. He was going to live. I looked up at the observation gallery. Stanton was gone. But I knew this wasn't over. 2 hours later, I was standing in the surgical lounge, still in my scrubs, too tired to move, but too wired to rest. David Miller was in the ICU, stable and recovering. The lab report on the tissue I'd removed had confirmed everything. Chronic perforation, infection, and inflammation, all matching a complication from his appendectomy 6 months ago. It was never cancer. The door opened. Dr. Ramirez and Ben Carter came in, followed by 2 people I didn't know. A woman in a dark suit holding a briefcase, and a man with a badge on his belt. "Dr. Hayes, this is Sarah Jenkins from the State Medical Board and Detective Mike Sullivan from the Fraud Division," Dr. Ramirez said. "Dr. Carter and I have been telling them everything we know about Dr. Stanton's cases. My heart pounded. Am I in trouble for the surgery? Detective Sullivan shook his head. No, Dr. Hayes, you're not in trouble. In fact, you may have just broken open one of the largest medical fraud cases this state has ever seen. We've been investigating an insurance fraud ring for 18 months. We knew doctors were involved, but we couldn't pin them down. Dr. Carter's information about the pattern of deaths and the insurance policies gave us the connection we needed. Sarah Jenkins from the medical board opened her briefcase. We've been reviewing Dr. Stanton's cases. We found 12 patients who were declared terminal and died in hospice. All of them had substantial life insurance policies. All of them had beneficiaries who got big payouts, and all of them had the same insurance broker, a man named Stephen Price. She pulled out a photograph. It was the man Ben had seen talking to Stanton at midnight. Price is the middleman. He finds patients with big policies, pays doctors to misdiagnose them as terminal, and then gets a cut of the insurance money. We've been trying to catch him, but we could never prove the doctors were knowingly involved, until now. Dr. Hayes, your surgery tonight saved David Miller's life, Detective Sullivan said. But it also gave us the hard evidence we needed. The lab report proves Stanton misdiagnosed a surgical complication as cancer. Combined with Dr. Carter's testimony and the financial records we already have, we have enough to arrest both Stanton and Price. Just then, the door opened again. 2 uniformed police officers walked in, followed by Dr. Mark Stanton, who was in handcuffs. His face was cold and furious. As they led him past me, he stopped and looked right at me. You destroyed everything I built, he said quietly. 30 years of service, thousands of lives saved, all gone because one arrogant resident couldn't follow orders. I met his eyes. You destroyed yourself when you decided your reputation was worth more than your patients. David Miller has 3 children who almost lost their father because you were too proud to admit a mistake. How many others died because of you? Stanton didn't say anything. The officers led him away. 3 weeks later, I was standing in the hospital administrator's office. David Miller was being discharged that day, fully recovered, going home to his wife and kids. The investigation had grown to include 8 other doctors in 3 states, all part of Price's fraud network. The story was on the national news. The administrator, Ms. Evans, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Dr. Hayes, what you did was extraordinarily brave. You saved a man's life and exposed a massive criminal operation. However, you also violated protocol by performing surgery as a second-year resident. The board has been discussing what to do about this. My stomach dropped. I knew this was coming. I understand if you need to terminate my residency. Ms. Evans smiled. Fired? No, Dr. Hayes. We're promoting you, effective immediately. You're being advanced to Chief Resident of General Surgery. You've shown the judgment, skill, and moral courage we want in our surgeons. Welcome to the team, Dr. Hayes. The real team.